those words is the fact that throughout the course of the last several days, you see that there are small heroes everywhere, and they're not just from New York. They're from Philadelphia, and they're from Boston, and they're from far places like Missouri. And as you mentioned, right outside here at the Jacob Javits Center, which has been turned into essentially the ground at which some of these people are deployed. They are been waiting here in the rain, as you can see, some of them waiting as early as 3:30 this morning. They're construction workers, and they're electricians, and they are metal and steel workers. A lot of these people needed to essentially shore up some of the very insecure ground near Ground Zero, and to construct and to get some of the electrical equipment working, and to get the electricity working, which in much of Lower Manhattan is not working at this point. Paula?
All right, Michael. What can you tell us about what you've heard from paramedics this morning, and the impact this storm overnight had and what they're able to do?
I haven't heard anything about, I haven't spoken directly to any paramedics, but what I can tell you is that some of the rescue workers say that the rain, while it is cooling down some of the smoke there and spreading the smoke and clearing off some of the dust, makes a lot of the equipment a lot heavier. Some of the guys that we spoke to this morning say they don't care whether it's raining, they don't care whether they're in the sunshine, they just want to help people. There's still some hope among many of the people here that there are people alive, and they're willing to work as long as it takes to find and save those lives. Paula?
Michael Aku, thank you very much for that report. We'll come back to you throughout the morning for an update. Welcome to a brand new hour of our coverage. At this hour in New York City, the rescue efforts continue after being suspended last night for a short period of time. As you see, there's a cloud shrouding the city right now. Last night it was thunderstorms rumbling through here. There was a great fear that the high cranes that are being used in the cleanup effort would serve as lightning rods, so the rescue efforts were suspended. They're back underway now. The rain causing some big problems here. It obviously is helping to keep down the dust, but at the same time, as we mentioned a little earlier on, and Michael just mentioned, is making the ash and debris very slippery and very heavy for the paramedics and the rescue workers that are on the scene right now. Once again, you're looking at pictures of actually what happened in the wee hours of the morning. We should mention that the many thousands of Metro workers have been buttressed by dozens of special search and rescue teams that have been flown in from all over the country. Many of those provided through FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And that is where it stands at this hour. Good morning, everybody. I'm Paula Zahn, joining you from New York City this morning. The city is also getting ready for a visit by President Bush later today. He is expected to arrive here after he appears at the National Prayer Service at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. The president has asked for us all to honor those that have been injured, those that have been maimed, those that have been killed today at noon. This service will take place at 11:45 in Washington. We will be covering it live at noon throughout the country. You're going to hear a pealing of church bells from coast to coast. The president has asked companies to allow workers to go to their individual places of worship, whether mosques, whether synagogues, whether churches, to honor those that whose lives have been drastically changed by these multiple attacks, and those, of course, who have lost their lives. The mayor of New York City now saying at least 4,700 people are missing at this hour. The known death toll nearing the 100 mark. Among those, some 300 or so firefighters and many police officers. Right now, we're going to go down to the Armory, which is where a lot of heartache is being experienced at the moment. That's where we find Hillary Lane, one of our CNN correspondents. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there right now. Hi, Hillary.
Oh, hi, Paula. While the rain may be making things so much more difficult downtown, it's not hampering the efforts of the people who are coming here, desperate to find any information they can on the people whom they loved so much. I'm standing outside of the Missing Persons Bureau. It is a giant armory that has been converted for that purpose. And this morning it opens up about 8 o'clock. there is already a short line of people who either were not able to make it in yesterday or who have come back with more information. One of the men I spoke with, the second in line this morning, says he was here on Wednesday when this Missing Persons Bureau opened for the first time. He's come back. He has brought with him dental records and a hairbrush, and obviously those are items that could be used for DNA identification purposes. The city of New York gearing up to do thousands upon thousands of DNA tests. Told me a little bit about what happens inside the armory after the people who come here to file missing persons reports fill those papers out, 8 pages in total. They're then each matched with a police detective, and they give all sorts of information. They're asked for names of dentists, again, for DNA identification purposes, if that becomes necessary, as well as a variety of other personal questions. I have here with me Stanford Chan, who was in the armory yesterday and can tell us a little bit about what happened inside when he filed that report. Tell us a little bit about what the detectives were asking you for in terms of personal identification information.
Basically anything that has to do with them physically, and particularly that day, what they were wearing. If you have any information regarding dental records, like you said, that's important to bring with you. Any identification marks on the body, whether it's earrings or anything. They're pretty detailed in terms of what they're asking. So. Yeah.
Okay, Stan, you have brought a picture with you. You are looking for one of your best friends. Just tell us a little bit about him. I know his wife was not able to make it in, which is why you're here today.
Yeah, his wife Stacy is home right now. She's 9 months pregnant, and she's doing all she can basically from the Jersey side and the police department there, which has been also cross-referencing with the police department here in terms of any information. Craig and I went to junior high school and high school together, and I'm doing all I can basically here in the city for them and for myself. So.
Okay, and I see he was on the 88th floor, and you haven't heard anything from him. When was the last time you spoke with him, or his wife spoke with him?
He actually left a message saying that he was okay when the plane first hit. But since then, we haven't heard anything from that.
Okay, and we saw you this morning wandering around the streets. You'd already been inside the armory, and now you were making your way to hospital, something you've already done. How does it feel now on the fourth day after, and at what point are you just saying, you know, this doesn't look good?
It's getting a little overwhelming. You know, I couldn't sleep, and I'm trying to do all I can and putting the picture up in the hospital right now. But there are so many pictures, and there's just so many people that are still missing. And this rain is just not helping the recovery process. It's making it also very dangerous for those that are already down there. We have a mutual friend that's in the NYPD, and he's been at Ground Zero for the last couple of days. And I've been talking to him as well, and it's a horrific experience down there as well. And this only makes it worse, basically.
Well, Stan, thank you. It's a wonderful thing you're doing to get out and put the posters up and keep pressing on.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And Paula, let me just tell you one other thing. I was out here a good part of the day yesterday, and people were coming up to us with posters. Anybody who would listen, anybody who would look, putting the posters in our face, just talking about these people, trying to get the pictures out. And it was really turning to desperation as people are beginning to realize that so many days have passed and the chances are so slim. Back to you.
I tell you, Hillary, you watch some of those conversations you've had, and we had a guest here earlier this morning, and you hear what they had to say, and you don't even know how they can stand up today. What they're having to endure is just absolutely unthinkable. We're going to show you a picture right now of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, where Prime Minister Tony Blair is meeting a number of parishioners who have just left a prayer service there in honor of the innocent Americans slaughtered here in the multiple terrorist attacks. I'm told the Prime Minister did speak at the service. This isn't the only service going on in Europe. There have been prayer services of this kind throughout that continent. Even in Albania and Croatia, there were special services earlier today, and in fact at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, there were many countries honoring the dead and the injured, and those of us that are still standing with 3 minutes of silence. Kind of an unusual scene for the Prime Minister to be greeting Londoners in this fashion, given the heightened state of alert throughout the world right now. An American flag, from what I can tell, hanging from an adjoining building or a building nearby the cathedral. A very touching scene, the Prime Minister seemingly conversing quite openly with Londoners. And as we leave that scene, I wanted to bring you up to date on some of the latest developments back here in America. You might have heard that searchers have found both recorders this morning from the jet, that crashed into the Pentagon on Tuesday. FBI agents took custody of the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder from American Airlines Flight 77. Coast Guardsmen boarded a Carnival Cruise Line ship this morning off the coast of Miami and took 2 people into custody. Authorities claim the 2 have a history of hijacking, but it is unclear if they could be directly connected with Tuesday's attacks. Congress and the White House have agreed on a $40 billion appropriation to help with the cleanup and recovery in New York and Arlington, Virginia. That is twice what the president had asked for. Formal votes are expected today in both houses. In New York, the search for an estimated 4,700 missing people in the ruins of the World Trade Center was interrupted overnight by heavy rain. We know at this hour that 184 sets of human remains have been recovered so far. More than 4,000 people have been treated at New York hospitals since Tuesday's attacks. Unfortunately, there are still hundreds and hundreds of families who have no idea where these injured are. And you hear these horrendous stories of families going from hospital to hospital to try to track down those that have survived. A quick reminder that a national prayer service will be held at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. later today. Our live coverage of that event will pick up at 11:45. Among those expected to attend, President Bush, our current president, his father, the former president, President Clinton, President Carter, President Ford, former Vice President Al Gore, as well as many, many members of Congress. Right now, we're going to check in with Major Garrett, who joins us from the White House with some more details on what we can expect there later today. Garrett, what can you tell us?
Good morning,
Major
Paula.
Garrett. Sorry about that. We've all been operating on limited hours of sleep here, so
There's no
sorry.
doubt. There's
Good
no
morning,
doubt.
Major.
Good morning, Paula. A very tall order for the president this morning at the National Cathedral, trying to speak to a nation racked with grief, but in the secular language of politics, not the religious language that so many other speakers will invoke. Billy Graham, often thought of as not only the pastor to America's presidents, but a pastor to the entire Protestant country. There will be other members of other religious affiliations at the National Cathedral, as you mentioned, former President Clinton, former Vice President Al Gore, Presidents Carter, Presidents Ford. Paula, we do not have an official White House confirmation that President George Herbert Walker Bush will be there. When we get that, we'll make sure and bring that to you. We're also expected to see in the audience at the National Cathedral former high-ranking officials from Democratic and Republican administrations of yore as a sign of solidarity. And the president will try to talk to the nation about why this happened, what we can draw from this as a country, how to look to the future, not only in a spiritual sense, but also in a secular sense of how this political environment can be improved, how the political unity now so prevalent here in Washington and across the country can manifest itself and be used against those who have perpetrated terror against the United States. All of those things on the president's agenda in his remarks at the National Cathedral. One person who is not expected to be at that prayer service and that service of remembrance, Vice President Dick Cheney. His absence indicative of the very high state of security around the White House. Vice President Cheney yesterday was sent to Camp David, the presidential retreat. Why? So the Vice President and the President of the United States would not be in the same location at the same time. We have some pictures I want to show you this morning, Paula, of the very high state of security around the White House. This morning, as I came into the White House grounds, I was met by police cars, camouflage Humvee military vehicles several blocks away from Washington, police officers, Secret Service agents, federal marshals checking IDs, not only mine, but everyone else who tried to come toward the White House grounds. This perimeter much wider, much more extensive than I've ever seen around the White House in my time covering the White House. Clearly an indication that the Secret Service believes that this White House compound, the people who work in it, the media, the president, and the extensive White House staff family need extra protection, and many, many more precautions are being taken to afford them exactly that kind of protection. After the National day of remembrance and prayer at the National Cathedral. President Bush will then fly to New York City to get a first-hand look at the damage, the extensive, horrific damage in Lower Manhattan. He will talk with the governor of New York, George Pataki, a Republican, and the mayor, Mayor Giuliani. He will also get a chance to extend his hand of thanks and gratitude and provide some spiritual sustenance to the firefighters, the police officers, the volunteers, the scores of New Yorkers who are assisting in the recovery efforts at that blighted area in Lower Manhattan. Paula?
Major, I saw the same thing here in New York late yesterday afternoon. I have never seen the police presence we've seen in the city. You probably remember there were some 90 bomb threats yesterday, all of them false, thank God. But I talked to a number of police officers that said the same thing. I mean, they have formed a perimeter area around Central Park, and no one is even confirming where the president will land his helicopter, I guess for very good reason. I wanted to move on to something else, Major, to get your reaction to. Secretary of State Colin Powell yesterday said publicly for the first time that Osama bin Laden is a prime suspect in these multiple attacks. What are you hearing from the White House? Are you hearing any other administration officials saying that?
Well, administration officials told CNN yesterday that not only Osama bin Laden, but other organizations may in fact be involved. The question naturally arises, why would Secretary of State Powell in public point the finger so directly at the Osama bin Laden organization? Well, one explanation that we're hearing here at the White House is, as the United States chief diplomat, Secretary of State Powell is, along with President Bush, working strenuously to marshal an international coalition against those the White House and the administration and the government of the United States believe perpetrated these acts of terror. And as the lead diplomatic spokesman for the United States, it was left to him to begin this process of signaling to those who may have not made up their mind quite yet about whether or not they're going to join the United States in this very aggressive effort that the president has promised to root out and find the perpetrators of this terrorism and win, as he said yesterday, for the world, the first war of the 21st century. So it's thought here at the White House it appropriate that the Secretary of State, as the lead diplomat, begin to send that signal around the world, because he, of course, will be having many conversations with leaders of nations that the president will no doubt want to join this coalition once it is fully formed, to wield the power he believes necessary to go after this terrorist cell. Paula?
Major, were you at the White House yesterday when the president spoke briefly with reporters from the Oval Office?
I was not, Paula. I was on my way back from Sarasota, Florida. If you'll recall, I was with the president when all of this horrible, horrible news first broke. We were down in Sarasota, Florida. The president reacted. We were able to bring that news to you. The president then took off on Air Force One. The rest of the press corps was left stranded in Sarasota, Florida, so I spent the better part of yesterday on an 18-hour bus ride back to Washington, D.C. I did see the president's remarks, and I can tell you there were two very important themes expressed by the president. Number one, he said he saw an opportunity to do a favor for generations yet unborn in this country and across the world to win this war against terrorism. The White House wanted to send a signal that though so many in America believe the world has changed forever and changed almost entirely for the worst, the president wanted to get out in front and say, no, perhaps not. Perhaps through all of this horror, we can find one unifying goal to change the world for the better, to bring out of this disaster something that might not only benefit this generation, but generations to come. It was a very firm message the president and his administration wanted to send. And also, though this was not necessarily intentional, his emotions were drawn to the surface by a questioner who asked, how is this affecting you personally, sir? I'm sure the whole nation who watched yesterday saw the tears well up in the president's eyes as he said, I'm thinking about the families, I'm thinking about the children, but I also have the job to do. And as the president said, he intends to do it. Paula?
Major, I was struck by the very same thing as I watched the president's remarks, and I know what my reaction to that was, and I have heard from many Americans that was oddly comforting to them because they can sense his absolute anger and sense of sorrow about what has happened here.
It's worth pointing out, Paula, that this president finds himself in an absolutely unique position in American history. Many, many presidents have had to grieve and had to comfort a nation at the loss of thousands of military personnel. But no U.S. president has ever had to confront so many civilian casualties. Casualties who became casualties for one reason and one reason only. They were American civilians. No president has had to cope with that personal grief, that personal emotional trauma. This president is doing that not only personally, but he's trying to help a nation through it, as well as respond legislatively and internationally to that very, as he calls it, and so many in his administration call it, heinous act. Paula?
One last question for you. President Clinton last night saying he was grateful that President Bush had gone through great efforts to get him back into this country. Tell us a little bit about the former presidents who have taken action against some of these regimes and how vulnerable they are and what it took yesterday to get them all safe and secure.
Well, Paula, I'm really not in a position to answer that question about President Clinton. It's obvious, though, that extraordinary efforts were undertaken to get President Clinton, who was in Australia, back into the United States and back swiftly. I can't really illuminate the details of exactly how that happened, but clearly President Clinton was gratified that President Bush made all the proper decisions to get him back here. He clearly wanted to be in New York, where he now has offices, wanted to share his own brand of commiseration with those who are trying to assist in the recovery and rescue efforts, and also significantly add his voice of support to this president. President Clinton knows as well as anyone in America how lonely and isolated a president can feel at a time like this, and how much the support across party lines, and especially from someone who used to sit in that very office, can be. And I'm sure he wanted to provide those comforting words, if not in person, at least within the borders of the United States.
All right. Major Garrett, thank you so much for the report. Glad you're back in Washington safely. I should add, we've learned that obviously former President Bush shares the same kind of vulnerability President Clinton did because of the actions taken during his administration against Iraq, and he is under the same kind of security watch that all the former presidents are at this hour. Quick reminder that 11:45, that national prayer service at the National Cathedral will get underway, where Major just mentioned a number of former presidents will be in attendance, as well as many, many members of Congress. This kind of scene will be mirrored across the country at noon. If you are outside, you will probably hear church bells in your community pealing. The president has asked for Americans, if they're employers, and I'm sure most employers will allow for this to happen, that Americans go to their normal places of worship, that they say prayers for the rescue workers who are doing the Lord's work right now, hoping that they will be able to find people alive in the rubble. In addition to that, obviously, prayers for the many, many thousands of Americans' lives who have been so dramatically changed. Right now, we're going to head back to Washington, where Eileen O'Connor is standing by with the very latest on the very broad investigation going on. What can you tell us, Eileen? I know you've been working the phones, and you seem to have something new just about every 10 minutes. What's going on?
Well, we do know that some of the people that were detained in New York last night have actually been released. They've been cleared. They've been released from questioning. Also, we do know that the Coast Guard has greeted a Carnival Cruise Line ship in Miami at 5 a.m. They detained 2 people on board with alleged hijacking history in the past. A lot of people being questioned, a lot of precautions being taken, but some of these people being cleared. Now, the investigation into who perpetrated this act and their associates is critical. The arrests in New York last night, 1 man arrested now. We know the others were released. 1 man arrested, still detained because he was arrested by local authorities, we're being told by the Department of Justice. What we know is that at least 8 people were detained last night for questioning at 2 New York airports. Sources say that 4 of those people had been at the airport, seen at the airport trying to board a flight on Tuesday. They were confronted, and sources say they had left. Now, because of a watch list that's been distributed to airport personnel, these same people were picked up again when they came again. Now, one of the total group picked up, according to sources, had false identification as a pilot. Again, most of this group has been released from questioning. One of the people seen as a linchpin in all of this investigation as to who may have perpetrated this is Mohammed Atta. Now, he was listed on Flight 11, according to federal law enforcement sources. He and another associate, Marwan al-Shari, attended 2 different different flight schools in Florida. A third man, possibly a cousin of al-Shehri, named Walid al-Shehri, was listed as well on Flight 11 from New York, according to official documents. That's the first plane that flew into the World Trade Center. That cousin attended a different flight school in Florida. Now, by tracing Atta's past, that led German authorities in Hamburg to arrest an airport worker and bring in another woman for questioning. They searched apartments where Atta al-Shehri and the other man, Marwan al-Shehri, lived for a time before coming to the United States. It's also, as I said, helped authorities generate that watch list, which they are using, precautionary measure, bringing in some people for questioning. Some of those people we know, though, are being cleared and released. Paula?
Eileen, this may be a tough one to sort of determine, but given now that Secretary of State Colin Powell has said on the record, has said publicly for the first time that Osama bin Laden is the prime suspect, how has that either changed the investigation or reinforced it?
Well, it has reinforced it, and also it has reinforced it because they know that he has a very wide network and also a very sophisticated network. And another thing is that with Osama bin Laden, some of these networks can be very loosely arranged, which can make them more difficult to detect. Though it has also led them to some leads. They're looking, obviously, for known associates of Osama bin Laden, and they're matching that against associates of, say, Mohammed Atta, and trying to put those pieces of the puzzle together. Paula?
All right, Eileen, we'll be checking in with you throughout the morning. Thanks for that latest information. Right now we're going to show you a picture of what's going on at the Pentagon at this hour. I believe this is a live picture. Yes, it is. You're looking at what is left of the small portion of the Pentagon that was hit. We can confirm for you this morning, and we learned this much earlier today, that the voice and data recorders have been found from the plane, or have been found and recovered from the hijacked jet that hit the Pentagon. A top official with search and rescue units has told CNN that the telltale pings from the black boxes had been heard Wednesday and Thursday. But Arlington County, Virginia spokesman Dick Bridges said we were not getting a strong enough signal from the black box yesterday. The boxes, we are told, are damaged but intact, and they were first turned over to the FBI, which in turn gave them to the National Transportation Safety Board. It is not clear when we will have any information from these boxes that will be shared with the public to give us a better idea of exactly how and when this plane went down. You might remember that Ari Fleischer of the White House confirmed 2 days ago that they now believe the intended target was not the Pentagon after all, but the White House. And this might all become more clearer as some of this information retrieved from these black boxes is shared with the public. Back to New York City, rescue efforts underway. The rain slowing things down a bit, getting rid of some of the acrid smoke that New Yorkers have been breathing for the last couple of days, but making the rescue scene extremely slippery, making the debris much heavier. And there is great concern, of course, that these working conditions are dangerous, and the paramedics and rescue workers are taking every precaution they can as they go about the dreadful business of trying to find folks alive. Right now, I'm going to check in with Brian Palmer, who joins us from St. Vincent's Hospital. This is the hospital, of course, that was the closest to the World Trade Center Inferno, and where many, many injured were taken. What is the latest from there, Brian?
Well, good morning. Weather is indeed a concern here as well. It's day 4 in a New York City transformed both physically and psychologically by Tuesday's blast. Here at St. Vincent's, things are sort of creeping back to normal. You'll see behind me there is traffic. This route has been open. It's one of the main routes downtown. So the state of emergency is no longer in force in this part of town. At St. Vincent's, in the past 36 hours, they have seen a number of rescue workers, but no victims of the initial blast, which is very disappointing to them. I repeat, in the past 36 hours, no victims from the initial blast. They have treated rescuers, including a Detroit firefighter who is suffering from blunt trauma. He's in fair and stable condition at this point. The Greater New York Hospital Association reporting that roughly 3,700 people have been treated in the greater New York area for blast-related injuries. They're going to have new numbers for us mid-morning. They don't expect those numbers to climb much higher. Again, disappointing numbers, meaning they're not pulling as many people out alive as they had hoped. So that's the report here from St. Vincent's.
Brian, I have to confess I was getting some information. During part of your report, and I apologize if you're repeating something that you've already said. But we've heard these horrendous stories about family members going from hospital to hospital. I actually have a friend who's been to 13 different hospitals trying to find a loved one. Are you seeing people coming there expectantly to see if one of their own has been hurt?
We have indeed. We've seen many family members coming to this media pen that we have here, also coming to the Patient Information Center that St. Vincent's has set up at 65 West 11th Street. They do have lists of people there. The hospital spokesman telling us that people have also been relying on websites which are not official websites, don't necessarily have accurate information. He told us that the Office of Emergency Management here in New York is working to put together a website with patient information, but they are at the moment hampered by some concerns about confidentiality. They can't post all those names until they get the go-ahead from various legal authorities. So we are seeing lots of people coming here, to the patient information centers. But what people are, what the spokesmen are advising us is that they're advising people to go to the Lexington Avenue Armory. That really is the clearinghouse for the best information here in New York City.
All right, Brian Palmer, thanks so much for that report. Appreciate it. Just another reminder that the mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, will be holding a news conference at 9 o'clock. We will be covering that live. We expect to hear a little bit more about not only what is going on in the rescue site at the hour, but also what might happen once the president arrives here later today. It is not clear exactly where the president is landing. I was told by a top New York police officer last night they were expecting some sort of helicopter landing. I don't know that the weather will permit that. Thunderstorms are predicted throughout the day. We will keep you posted on that. Of course, the president getting his first-hand look of what was wrought on this city. Let's go back to Miles now, who joins us from Atlanta once again.
Thanks very much, Paula. Recapping the latest developments for you at this hour. Searchers say they have recovered both the voice and flight data recorders from that American Airlines 757 that crashed into the Pentagon. The U.S. Coast Guard boarded a Carnival cruise ship and detained two people said to have a history of hijacking, all part of that sweeping international dragnet that is underway. And Congress joined with the White House in an agreement that would offer New York and Virginia a $40 billion emergency aid package. There seems to be no question the U.S. will respond to these attacks. We've heard the president vow it. We've heard others in Congress insist upon it. We're joined this morning by the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark, now working as a military analyst for CNN. General Clark, thanks for being with us.
Morning, Miles.
The general has a very interesting op-ed piece in the Washington Post this morning. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first of all, when we hear these talks about these dramatic strikes, the first question is where and whom would be affected by this. Maybe we can just go through a map of the region for just a moment and get sort of the lay of the land and see how problematic it might be as a military planner trying to come up with targeting locations.
Well, a lot of attention has focused on Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a country that's been racked by civil war for 2 decades. The Russians came in, the resistance movement aided by the United States and the West fought back. We used Pakistan as a base for this resistance movement. The Russians pulled out when the Soviet Union collapsed, and Afghanistan has been in a state of perpetual civil war ever since. Somewhere in Afghanistan, we believe that Osama bin Laden has had 1 or more training facilities and camps. Maybe he's located there. It's hard to believe that the government of Afghanistan doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't know where he is, and can't keep up with this. He's probably drawing support somewhere out of Pakistan. But there's a broader network that's at play here, Miles. These organizations are connected from Afghanistan in many other places in the Middle East, in Europe, in South America, in Asia, and even into the United States. And so there's regular traffic that goes back. couriers that move, money that flows, instructions, messages, technology that moves. We saw last year a strike against the American destroyer, the USS Cole, in the country of Yemen, the port of Aden. We know that was connected somehow. There are persistent rumors that Saddam Hussein may have some communications with this. We know that people come from, and Osama bin Laden is from Saudi Arabia. Others are identified as coming from other of the Gulf Coast states. There's concern about whether Iran has a role to play in this. And so it's a broad network. It's composed of many thousands of individuals, possibly with government connections, in various countries, and we've got a lot more work to do, I think, on this.
It seems to me what is crucial in a situation like this is not to rely so much on fancy satellite imagery, but good, solid human intelligence to find out where these people might be at any given moment.
Right.
Do we have that?
Well, we have very good intelligence, but some of these countries also have very good intelligence, and what we need is stronger intelligence sharing. We need to rapidly follow up the leads, and we need to crack open these terrorist cells that are located not only in the Middle East, but in Europe and in the United States, one by one, individual by individual. They need to tell us about what's going on, and then we'll run these cells back to their starting point.
Well, when you do that, though, it requires a great degree of patience. The American public right now maybe is not in a patient mood. You make the analogy in your op-ed piece that if what we saw is a latter-day Pearl Harbor, there might be a desire for a latter-day Doolittle raid, the 30 seconds over Tokyo bombing raid. Is that an appropriate thing to be seeking right now?
Well, it might be the right thing if we can get the right target and disrupt this organization. It might help us prevent further attacks. But it's a question of whether we can find the right targets and then how to strike them.
All right, let's put the right map in the Cody telestrator there, and let's take a look at the greater Mideast here and give us a sense here, talking about this network and how difficult it is to track, how these other countries might come into play.
Well, we know that you're dealing with individuals here, and they're moving from country to country and place to place, and so at various times they may have been and moved through Iraq or Syria or into various parts of the occupied territories, or through Egypt. They may have been in Cyprus or moved into Western Europe. They may have received training or instructions or money. So it's a complex web of individuals, some of whom are known to authorities in various countries. They go by different identities, they have different passports, and it's a complicated matter for international police and law enforcement as well as for our intelligence communities.
General, these borders are very porous then to
They are porous because even though they require passports and other things, the passports appear, and individuals don't have Social Security cards and they don't have a Social Security account number.
If you were in a position right now to be delivering advice to the national security team, what would you tell them to do?
I'd say we've got to work the information, work our allies, build a coalition, strengthen the resolve of all of the nations who've expressed sympathy with us to take the hard political decisions to go after these groups in their own countries. Parts of these groups are known in many countries, and there may be intimidation and fear and threats against the government in this country. They've got to make these hard decisions. The Palestinian Authority, Yasser Arafat, yet there are people there in the West Bank who probably know some of these people. Does Yasser Arafat know them? Can he find them? Can he get information to us? That's what we're going to be looking for.
Let's take a look at one more map here, and this will show us the area of North Africa. Libya is the country which, of course, immediately comes to many Americans' minds with Muammar Gaddafi. Is he still a player in all of this? Does he aid and abet this activity in some sense? And would the U.S. be wise to look for cells there as well?
We certainly are looking for cells there. Muammar Gaddafi says that he's renounced this. He sponsored a form of state terrorism, and we tried to bring it to trial in the Lockerbie trial. And maybe after the strikes in 1986, Muammar Gaddafi saw that he couldn't be directly associated with terrorism. But there are connections that remain throughout this area to militant fundamentalists in Algeria, to militant groups in Egypt, perhaps in Libya as well, in Syria and throughout the Middle East. And so this is a network, and we're talking not about governments yet, We're talking about individuals. And then we've got to go and find where they've drawn support from those governments.
And one other point you make in this article in the Washington Post this morning, which is particularly troubling, is that this is, in your opinion, a very precarious time because a plot has been discovered. There are clearly other suspects out there, either thwarted attempts at other hijackings or maybe further attacks are contemplated. Is this a more precarious time, and should we be on this heightened alert for quite some time now?
Well, I think we do have to remain alert because an organization that could plan something like this, it's clearly got other plans, and we don't know when they're going to be released on us. I think the more active we are in terms of doing our police work, the greater the chance we'll put this network off balance. This is not a network that has the flexibility and responsiveness of, let's say, our armed forces. It's a network that's directed to single purposes, and if you disrupt it and force it to move and force it to change its plans, it can't react. And so that's why I'm so very pleased by what we see our police and law enforcement agencies doing today.
General Wesley Clark, former NATO Supreme Commander, now a military analyst for CNN, we really appreciate your insights, giving us quite literally the lay of the land in the Middle East and the difficulties that lie ahead in identifying targets for retribution and for justice, ultimately.
It's going to be difficult.
We'll send it back to Paula in New York. Paula?
All right, Miles, unfortunately the weather hasn't changed all that much since the last time we spoke. You're looking at a picture of the New York City skyline. The skyline obviously so severely altered by what happened on Tuesday. Rain is expected throughout the day. You might remember that some 1,000 rescue workers had to put aside their heavy equipment during the middle of the night when thunder began and the lightning began. Today, in addition to their normal gear that they wear, many are wearing slickers and rain gear. The rain making things incredibly slippery and dangerous. And joining me now is a man that knows an awful lot about what these heroic Americans are up against in their cleanup efforts and their recovery efforts. Todd Rittenhouse, welcome. You are a structural engineer. You were called in to help assess the damage after the World Trade Center bombing, and you also were involved with the Oklahoma City bombing stuff.
That's right. We step in and try to help them ascertain what actually happened during the event and how can we prevent it from happening again.
All right. Explain something to me. I am told the World Trade Centers were expected to be able to withstand the brunt of a force of a 707. What happened?
That's what apparently they tried to do. But in this case, this is a much larger jet. It's a 400,000-pound aircraft approximately, carries a lot of fuel, and it's not only the impact of a much bigger bigger plane, but also all the fuel that it was carrying that ignited and damaged the structure.
All right, we're going to look at some pictures now. The picture that, of course, will be forever seared into our national consciousness here. What effect did the fuel have on weakening this structure? I can imagine a tremendous amount of heat was put on.
Right. Well, there are two parts. It's first the aircraft impacting the structure, which does a lot of damage to the structure. Then you have the explosion of the fuel afterwards, which then goes to soften and melt the structure that's remaining. That becomes unstable and it can ultimately collapse upon itself. So it's the jet aircraft flying into the building and the huge fireball that ensued afterwards.
Now, aren't these buildings built so they will fall like a tree instead of straight down?
Well, it's one of the way that this occurred, the attack happened at such a high level that it made the top portion of the building unstable, and that fell down and kind of created a pancaking effect as it went down the structure.
Yeah, we're watching that right now. It's just hideous to watch.
It is. It's a very sad thing to watch.
So they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew the angle to hit this building at.
They did a very good job.
They knew where to hit it on the first tower, where to hit it on the second. I mean, they tried that the first time around, right?
They tried it
from the basement the last time. They wanted the two towers to collapse into each other.
Correct.
What did they figure out this time that they didn't accomplish the first time?
Well, the first time they hit it so low.
I am making an assumption I should not be here.
Right.
That the same people are responsible for the first bombing, but you know what I'm saying.
I understand. No, the difference is there was 107 stories above the detonation point in the first attack, and that's a tremendous amount of weight, so the bomb would have to be so much larger to overcome that weight that it's carrying. This time they moved higher into the building, made the building unstable at a higher elevation where there isn't so much load, and it's much softer. It's much softer at that elevation, so they're able to penetrate it, have this huge fireball, damage the structure, and then it will collapse down upon itself like it did. We're very fortunate it did collapse upon itself because we have a huge debris of rubble in one location as opposed to a tree falling over, which could have taken out more buildings many, many more people. So we're fortunate in that.
But the fact remains that some 100 buildings in the surrounding area have been damaged, and we're getting all kinds of conflicting information about whether any of those will fall. There's
That's
this
right.
54-story tower we're all watching. The mayor came out yesterday and said everybody had reported prematurely it was going to go, but acknowledged that there are some structural damages there.
That's right. There are many buildings around the ground zero area that are perhaps unstable, and we're going through right now. There are many individuals, engineers, the Structural Engineering Association in New York is out there trying to work with the city officials to assess the various buildings. We won't know for a long time the exact condition of each of these buildings. We're trying to determine which ones are safe and which ones are not, so that the evacuation efforts and the rescue and the search and rescue people can do their job.
We have just learned from the Wall Street Journal this morning that the New York developer who led the group that bought this 99-year-old lease of this building is determined to rebuild it.
Right.
If they rebuild it, are they going to build it differently?
Oh, they certainly will build it differently. I would like to see them rebuild it as a symbol of New York. I have my personal doubts, but what we do after every event, after the first World Trade Center, after the Oklahoma City event, and the others that have occurred, we at Weidlinger Associates, with many other firms, have gone out and tried to tell them how to redo it again, how to build these buildings so that you don't have this problem again.
Todd Rittenhouse, thank you for your wealth of information. Todd and I were talking a little bit earlier on about what the rescue workers are up against. This rain certainly not helping matters. Let's go to Martin Savage, who now is what we are all taking to calling Ground Zero, to give us some insights as to exactly what is going on in that search and rescue area. Good morning, Martin.
We are in the area of Reed and Greenwich Street. It's a couple of blocks north of the World Trade Center site. The rain has been falling steadily here. Overnight, though, it came down quite heavily at times, especially around 2 o'clock in the morning. And there is reported to be some street flooding in the area that the search...
All right. I'm just being given an indication that we're having problems with this audio. As you can expect, this weather is not helping things. Todd, you know exactly, as we look at these pictures of this horrendous weather, what these rescue workers are up against. You know how the debris fell. What is the biggest challenge now? I know they have moved out, I guess the mayor confirming 1,000 tons of this stuff so far, but there is a lot of work to get done.
Right. You have buildings down there that are, the debris pile is unstable. You have several things you want to be careful as you remove certain pieces that you don't cause another mini collapse in a localized area, possibly killing people that they are near to rescuing or injuring the rescue workers themselves. Now, this rain has been terrible on it because it makes all those surfaces slippery. All that dust and debris that's been around is becoming muddy and very slippery, so the rescue workers are now in danger themselves.
Todd, if you would, please stand by. We're going to try to bring Martin Savage back up. Martin, we couldn't hear you earlier. We think we can now. Fire away.
Paula, you do hear us now from down here?
Yes, I do indeed. Yeah, okay. Please go ahead.
We wanted to let you know, obviously, the weather has been extremely problematic for the rescue operation that continues to be underway. A steady rainfall has been falling all night. At times, though, last night, very stormy. The winds have been gusty down here. We are at a checkpoint. It's about one of the closest points, several blocks north of the World Trade Center area, talking to volunteers, talking to 3 firefighters that have come in from Maryland, Akakie, and the fire department there. And it's Chief Gene Jordan. Chief, thank you for being with us. Thanks to your firefighters. What impact has this weather been for the effort?
It's hampered it a lot. It's made it a lot more difficult to get into the area that we needed to get into. And last night they had to pull us all out when it started getting bad. We went back in late last night and left there about 4 o'clock this morning. And we're just getting ready to go back in as soon as they let us.
You're up against so much already, and then Mother Nature turns on you. What does that do to the emotions and the morale?
Well, it lowers the morale, of course, because everyone was in there, and as long as it was dry and everything, it was a lot easier to work with. So, of course, that was making the efforts a lot easier for us. But it may have knocked down the dust, but it made it a lot worse. Everything's heavier now. Getting the dust out and everything, and dirt and debris is going to be a lot heavier.
One of the things you cannot see so obviously now is the cloud, but it really is still there. There is still fire.
Yes, there is still fire. There's still fire in some adjacent buildings, small fires, and there's a lot of fires. They're going way deep into the structure. I mean, 40, 50, 60 feet, I'm sure. So
the rain hasn't reached down there yet?
I wouldn't think it's reached down there a lot, no.
Okay.
No.
Well, the key question here is survivors. Have you heard anything? Have you heard of reports of noise? Any indication?
Yesterday morning they heard tapping on the beams that were, I guess, 2 beams that they heard different taps on, and they did concentrate efforts on that. We heard later on that they did rescue 1 person. I don't know everything behind that, but I know they did rescue 1.
There's a lot of confusion at the site.
Yeah.
Catherine and Tim, I want to bring you in. One of the dramatic scenes that we've witnessed down there You've got hundreds, sometimes thousands of people working, and the call for quiet. Describe for us what happens when all this takes place.
If somebody thinks they hear something, they start yelling, raising their hands up in the air, and within a matter of seconds, everything's dead silence. People shut off the tools, the machines shut off, and just it's like a wave going across 1,000 people.
This is shouted across the crowd, and it's passed from unit to unit, and everyone goes silent.
Yeah,
within a matter of minutes, everything is shut down. Within a minute, everything is shut down. I mean, there's thousands of rescue workers over there, and within 1 minute, because everyone knows what we need to hear, it's dead silence.
And at that moment, Tim, what goes through your hearts and minds?
Hoping that we'll get a response where we'll hear something, because we're sending out voice calls to them, and if they respond back to us, that's what we're hoping for.
Mm-hmm. Why were you here?
Our hearts are here. Our hearts are here to help. We just want to help. There's hundreds of people buried underneath this disaster, and we want to help get them out, hopefully alive.
Catherine, I know you're going to have to leave soon, eventually. What will you take away?
Hopefully, the memory of saving people. I don't want to think about leaving people behind. It's nice to know that we've already pulled out people alive, and that's what I want to take with me, that we've saved lives.
Chief, when you leave, obviously as a firefighter, you've seen many disasters.
Yeah.
Nothing like this.
Nothing like this. This is the most horrific sight I've ever seen. I've got 21 years on the job, and this is the worst I've ever seen.
Well, we want to thank all three of you for being here, and we really appreciate your efforts.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you in your further work.
All right, thank you.
So there are many volunteers that have come from all over. They refer to the firefighters here in New York City traditionally as New York's bravest. Now they refer to all of the firefighters from wherever they have come as New York's bravest. Paula?
Martin, thank you so much. I'm going to share with you some of what is in the New York papers this morning along that note as we look at pictures of the hundreds of New Yorkers that have come out in this nasty weather to volunteer. Something that I think says it all about the spirit of involvement. This comes from the New York Daily News. The title of the editorial is "This Mr. Bush is Ground Zero." Welcome to New York, Mr. President. Welcome to the world's greatest city. Welcome to a city filled with people who, despite their reputation for arrogance and for attitude, are at heart the kindest, warmest, most caring folks you'd ever want to meet. Some things will never change. Some things already have. The terrorist who struck at our heart murdered thousands, but they could not murder the American spirit. Even if they had destroyed the Statue of Liberty or the U.S. Capitol building or the White House, our strength would remain. America is not a building, a statue. It is people. It is 8 million New Yorkers, along with 272 million other Americans, and all of us are counting on you, Mr. Bush, to lead us in this time of darkness. These pictures say it all, and Michael Lakou is among the hundreds of New Yorkers who have gone to many places throughout the city to volunteer. Michael, please fill us in on what everybody's doing now.
I'm really touched by these people, Paula. Many of them have been standing here since 3:30 this morning. They are construction workers, they are electricians, they are steel workers, and they come from all walks of life and from all over the United States. I've talked to people from Missouri, I've talked to people from Pennsylvania and from Delaware. In fact, I'm greeted now by two gentlemen who came here who are construction workers, Chris and Drew.
Yes.
What happened when you went inside? What is it that you wanted to offer as a service?
Any bit of help I can do. Pick up a rock, move something, give out water, anything they need. Anything they need, that's why I'm here, just to help out.
How did you know to come here?
Saw it on the news. I said, that's it, we're coming. So we came. Just drove around New York.
Seen it on the news, sitting there with him and just, let's go. They need help, let's go.
You say that you came from Delaware.
Yeah.
When did you come from Delaware and how did you get here?
We drove in my car yesterday. We got up here pretty lost in New York. We kept getting wrong directions. We finally found this place. Waited in line a couple hours, and they said they need us this morning. We slept in our car. got here this morning. Now they're saying they don't need us till tomorrow, so it looks like we'll be sleeping in our car again tonight.
And you mentioned to me earlier that they don't need you because right now they're looking for steel workers.
Yes, they need iron workers. They said there's not enough iron workers to cut the iron. That's the biggest problem they have is cutting the iron, so they can get everyone in there to help clear the debris.
Well, you drove all the way from Delaware. You slept in your car. When they told you that they didn't need your services today, how did you feel?
A little let down, but if they need us tomorrow, we're here for tomorrow.
Well, what are you going to do tonight?
Sleep in the car.
Sleep in the car. Probably walk around New York. First time in Manhattan, so I'll see the sights, walk around, go back to the car, sleep.
Again tomorrow morning.
Get back up. Here we are.
And check into the Jacob Javits Center bright and early tomorrow morning.
Again tomorrow morning. Wait in line another 3 or 4 hours. And hopefully tomorrow it won't be raining.
Yeah. You two exemplify the spirit, I think, that are making many Americans proud.
Thank you.
Paula, I think that pretty much says it all. Back to you.
Thank you, Michael. I'll tell you, my heart goes out to all my fellow New Yorkers out there who are going out and doing what they can to help out. We heard another poignant scene about something that happened last night to one of our producers from FNC, Warren. He described a scene of trying to get on a train last night at Grand Central. He heard people cheering. He didn't know what it was. He looked around and he looked over his shoulder to see a New York firefighter walking through the terminal. At that point, everybody erupted in applause. The fireman then taking his helmet and saluting them. And I think Senator John Warner, Miles might have been correct the other day when he said Tuesday is one of the, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but one of the saddest days of American history, but in the end may turn out to be one of our finest hours.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Paula. Let's move now to Washington, D.C. Kate Snow is on Capitol Hill, as she has been all throughout this. Yesterday, they're reporting on that $40 billion emergency appropriation to help New York and the Virginia area rebuild after these attacks. Kate, what's new?
Well, that's going to be taken up here in the Congress this morning, Miles. Joining me right now, a very powerful, very well-known senator, Senator Joseph Biden from Delaware. I want to talk to you about a few things. You are the chairperson of the Foreign Relations Committee, so you have a lot of information about what's been going on. First, let's start with what happened in New York. There have been a lot of reports overnight last night about some detained people in New York at the airport. Tell us what you know.
What I know is to be factual, and last night I couldn't say this on air. Those people have no connection whatsoever to what happened at the World Trade Towers or the Pentagon or this organization and network. Two things happened, Kate. One guy, an actual pilot, got on the plane, coincidentally had his brother's identification as well. His brother happened to live in an apartment complex that was one in Boston where some of these people had actually been. Totally coincidental. 10 other people were going to a Boeing conference. They had stickers on their bags. They worked for Boeing or were invited by Boeing. I'm not sure the detail. The folks at the airport thought, hey, wait a minute, are they impersonating crew? And they weren't. One guy was arrested and detained, and it was a screwball who was acting out. Was acting out, just saying and demanding, I'm not sure exactly what he was doing, demanding to get on, making problems. And they arrested him. All the rest of these people have been released. There is no connection whatsoever. Now, what happened was, because we're all on such high alert here, they closed down all those airports until they knew that was the case.
But you're confident that that's the case.
I'm confident that I've spoken to the director of the FBI, the number 2 guy. I've spoken to the CIA and George Tenet. This was 6 o'clock this morning, as late as 6:30 this morning, which is what, an hour and a half ago. Or whatever.
What about other leads and other, there have been many other, we've been reporting many other places where investigations are underway.
Well, there are.
Florida.
Kate, there are, and there will be other people arrested. These guys didn't operate alone. Last night when I was responding to another program, was I aware of what was going on? I thought they were talking about investigations of baggage handlers, of people at airports, etc. That is thoroughly, we have 7,000 FBI agents out there combing the countryside, and you will see other arrests. But one thing people should understand, there is no evidence that there were people trying to get on a plane to duplicate what happened at the Pentagon or in Pennsylvania or in the state of New York.
Is there evidence that there could be more to come? Do you have a sense for that?
I'm not at liberty to speak to that, except to say people should not be, I understand their fear, but people should not be fearful that there's an imminent prospect of a similar event occurring. We're going to get all kinds of threats, Kate. We walked out of this building, Kate, yesterday. I was embarrassed, quite frankly, to walk out. You were here. You were here. Now, we did something we never done before. We evacuated on the threat of a bomb scare. We've never done that before until you've actually seen something. You look and see a box, you see, and so, but everybody is on tenterhooks now, and we are, and I'm not second guessing it, but we are reacting in a way in the aftermath of this that's going to take a little bit of time to sort of climb off of.
Let me go back to the investigation just for a moment, since you do know so much. What can you tell us about whether these were cells of people who knew each other, who didn't know each other? Do you have any sense for how big an organization we're talking about?
Let me be careful here. We have evidence that there were a number of cells, all knowing one another, all in part of the game plan, that were able to pull off this god-awful event. I think in the next days, Kate, you'll see some very concrete evidence of that presented to the American people.
Will we